Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Lou. Haven't done a video in a while. Sorry about that. Life's been really busy, but there's some things I wanted to talk to you guys about today. So, first things first, I apologize about the quality. Obviously not using my new HD webcam. I'm using the webcam on my laptop, so the video quality is so-so, and you may see some drop in frames every now and again. So I apologize about that. But with that out of the way, I wanted to kind of cover a question I get all the time, and that is from new Linux users or people who are thinking about switching over to Linux, what distribution of Linux should I use? Now, this is a really interesting question because there really is no right answer I can give you. The reason for that being is there's so many different distributions of Linux that all have different purposes. Now, that's really important to decipher. Now, when people compare Linux distributions, it's always, distribution A versus distribution B, Ubuntu versus Fedora, Arch versus Gentoo, and so on. It's not that simple. It's just not that simple. What I've been seeing a lot, especially since Fedora 16 has been released, is a lot of people reviewing it have been given a really hard time. They've been saying it's really only made for the server, it's really complicated to use, and so on. I mean, and these reviews are being done by experienced Linux users, and it truly boggles my mind because really Fedora it's not hard to use. It's not hard to use at all, and I'm not trying to say that because I think I'm some super geek that knows everything about Linux. I'm not, but I say that because I in fact don't think I'm that advanced and I can grasp Fedora. And so the fact is, if I can understand Fedora, I think most people will be able to understand Fedora. Now, as you're approaching a Linux distribution, you have to ask yourself the question, what am I looking for? What a lot of people run into with Linux is they'll install Linux, whatever distribution that may be, and they'll find that a piece of their hardware doesn't work, they can't get a certain service running, and all of a sudden they throw their hands up in the air and say, screw Linux, it's terrible, nothing works, it's awful, all the rumors are true. And you got to understand, Linux doesn't have this huge corporation, behind it. All these distributions, many of which are volunteer projects, community-based projects. Some of these distributions are, comprised of, less than 5 people. So you got to keep all that in mind. These distributions aren't out there to be compatible with every single piece of hardware in existence, because that's one of the fundamental problems with Linux, is that hardware manufacturers don't make their source code of their drivers available for Linux. And so a lot of times you're going to find that, take video cards for instance, ATI and NVIDIA, the two main video card companies, they do have proprietary drivers, but what you get in most Linux distributions is the free and open source ones. And so, which have come a long way, by the way. They're not amazing, but they have come a long way. And so, that's something you may run into with Linux. However, if you really take enough time, do enough research, you're going to find that you can probably get most of all your hardware working. It's just going to take a little work to get it done. Now, if you're the type of person that just wants to turn on his or her computer and just have everything work, Linux is not the distribution for you. I mean, you may be able to install a distribution, have everything work, and be lucky. But if you're anything like me, when I first installed Linux, I had certain pieces of my hardware that I had to jump on Google and do some searches to get working. Most distributions now on OEM computers like, say, Dell or HP, most of what you're going to get from a distribution on a computer like that, most of your hardware is going to work because it's commonly used components that they include in those most of those type of OEM machines. When you get a lot of custom hardware, you may have some issues here or there, but when it comes down to distribution, you have to ask yourself, what are you looking for? Because there's just literally hundreds of different distributions of Linux. The one that I'm using right now is Fedora 16. Love it. I mean, I'm having a really good time using Fedora. And what I've been seeing is, again, a lot of people saying that it's only for the advanced user, it's only for the server. that it's just ludicrous. It's really crazy that people are saying this about Fedora, because it is not hard to use whatsoever. If somebody like me, I would consider myself a power user, but a pretty intermediate power user when it comes to Linux. If I can understand it, you can understand it. I mean, for instance, everyone's saying, "Oh, it's so hard to install codecs," and I mean, I did a video on this already. You know, if you're running Fedora and you want to install any type of codec, if you go to RPM Fusion, and here we go, I did a video on this, and you enable these repositories, go to configuration here, and it tells you how to install all of these repositories. Not hard. What about this is difficult? Nothing. People are making this out to making it seem like you got to be a rocket scientist to do this. It's ridiculous how easy this is. In fact, people say that Fedora is so difficult to use. Let me show you what I have. Because I do all sorts of different installs all the time, wiping my hard drive clean and reinstalling everything, what I do is in my Dropbox file, I keep this. It's a little Fedora kind of cheat sheet. Once I install Fedora brand new, on a completely wiped system, after I do my updates and whatnot and bring my system up to date, I enable the RPM Fusion repositories, and then I begin installing all this stuff. Here's my FFmpeg packages. If I want to view and watch DVDs on the laptop, here's the packages I need for that. Here's a lot of my multimedia packages to listen to MP3s and so on. And then here's all the applications that I usually install. Audacity, Minitube, Banshee, Blender, GIMP, Gparted, OpenShot, Sound Converter, VLC, GUVC View, Meld, Gnome Tweak Tool. There's a bunch of kernel packages in here that I usually get too. Here's a bunch of 32-bit packages that I usually have to install because I work with the Android SDK. A couple little just little tidbits I have in here, different things. Zen kernel. You know, here's what I usually do to clone the Zen Git if I want to make a performance kernel. Here's Linux Mint's Git for all of their custom extensions if I want to install Linux Mint 12's a lot of their new custom extensions. I can go here and get those. The VirtualBox repository. Actually, no, I'm sorry. This is the command that you generally set up to build the VirtualBox kernel module. Anyway, very short little file, but literally in under an hour. That's including updating my system after the install, getting all the system updates done, enabling the RPM Fusion repositories, and getting every codec that I'll ever use, as well as all my apps installed in under an hour. What about that is difficult? And all I had to do is go to RPM Fusion, enable the repo, and I'm done. So that's my little rant about that. People make this Fedora out to be such a really difficult distribution to work with. That's it. That's how to install everything. That's what everyone's making a big deal about. Not hard. Another reason why I like Fedora is it's running the latest version of Gnome Shell. And let's see, we'll show you guys what it's running here. Gnome version 3.2.1. I'm a huge Gnome Shell fan. I know amongst the Linux community, again, Gnome Shell is kind of a bit of a controversy, but I love it. I love interacting with it. It really works for me and how I like to manage my workflow. And another reason why I like Fedora is it really presents you oftentimes with a lot of the bleeding edge software. I've installed Arch many times. I really like Arch. I like their philosophy behind their project and the reason why they created the Arch project. I'm that type of person, however, that wipes my hard drive and installs quite often actually for all different reasons. But setting up Arch is a lot more involved than burning the latest copy of Fedora and getting it up and running. And so for that reason, I find Fedora to work well for me. Fedora has an awesome free and open source software philosophy. They offer a lot of bleeding edge software, and so no one harps on Arch's case because they offer bleeding edge software. In fact, anytime anyone talks about Arch, one of the biggest feathers in their hat, so to speak, is the fact that they offer this free and open source software. So I don't get why people get on Fedora about being a beta distribution. It is not. I mean, maybe it used to be, but from Fedora 15 to Fedora 16, I've been using them religiously, and it's far from beta. It's very stable for me. So they offer bleeding edge software. You tend to get bugs every now and again, but I find that it's been really stable. Let's see here. The other thing with Fedora is, again, because of its free and open source software philosophy, there may be some things missing from the kernel that you would need for your hardware because they don't include it because it may be a proprietary driver. Not a big deal. One of the first things that I normally do after I install Fedora is I put my own kernel together. And I do this just because I like to kind of geek out that way. But I'm running kernel 3.1.1. It's a BFS and a BFQ kernel with a custom configuration, completely configured for my particular system, which is an Intel-based system. I stripped out all of the AMD stuff. I have the governor set to performance. I like things snappy. I like them quick. I don't like to wait for anything. And so, I did a couple other little things like that aside from, the BFS and BFQ patches. And so, everything's running really good with this kernel. The other thing about Fedora is it uses a lot of vanilla packages. And by vanilla package, I mean it doesn't offer a lot of custom versions of a certain package. You'll see specifically a project like Ubuntu. They will modify certain packages from developers for their own custom version. What you get a lot of times with Fedora is whatever that particular developer released, that's what you're going to get in Fedora. I like that. I don't like things modified too much. I really enjoy having, what originally was intended to be released without any modifications. I like having that. And so, that's another reason why I like Fedora. Also, Fedora does a ton of work with the kernel, and they also work on developing new technologies that they constantly contribute to the upstream for the better of Linux as a whole, not just their own distribution. What you get a lot is certain distributions constantly just developing for themselves, and that's it. And I'm not going to start a distribution war, but there's a few that come to mind as of lately. They're working on their own thing, and that's fine. However, Fedora doesn't just work on Fedora. It develops new technologies, and it shares them upstream, and so that the whole Linux community can benefit as a whole, and it doesn't matter what distribution you're on. I really like that philosophy too. I think Fedora is a stable, at least for me, in my experience, it's been a stable, smooth operating system, and it's nothing to be scared of. So when people ask me, what Linux distribution should I use? What are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish? That all is going to play a part in how you answer that question. But for me right now, Fedora 16 is the way to go. I'm a Gnome Shell guy, and this is an unadulterated Gnome Shell experience. And I'm really excited about what the Gnome team is doing with Gnome Shell 4. They're coming out with a lot of their own custom applications. I love a lot of the different ways that they're tying in things in the cloud, and I'm really excited about where Gnome is going, and that's another reason why I'm sticking with Fedora. They're really backing up Gnome and providing you with, again, an unadulterated Gnome Shell experience. That's what I really love. So for me, right now, Fedora 16 is the distribution of choice. Is it only made for the super geek? Absolutely not. Can you use it? Absolutely, you can. Again, you may have to put a little work into trying to get certain things up and running. It may not be quote-unquote as out-of-the-box user-friendly as another distribution, but quite frankly, it's not that hard to work on a Fedora system. It's completely conducive to everyday work that you or I would do from home, not just someone managing a server. It's all ridiculous. The people who say that are supposed to be these experienced Linux users, and quite frankly, I'm shocked that they even say something like that. It doesn't take a lot of Linux knowledge to run Fedora. Period. It just does not. So don't just take my word for it. set up a virtual machine, install Fedora, and play around with it. And I think you're going to find that it's a really nice distribution to use. I used to be a big apt fan. I still kind of am. However, I've really come to love Yum. Yum is the package manager that Fedora uses. It's fast, it's intuitive. I love the history feature. I really like it. In fact, they just updated Yum not too long ago. A lot of performance increases in that. Huge fan. So, a decent amount of software once you enable the RPM Fusion repositories. And, yeah. So, that's my bit on kind of Linux distributions. I could talk a lot more about them. But specifically, I wanted to bring out certain points about Fedora and debunk some of the things that are being said out there right now. It's not a hard distribution. Again, I'm not a Fedora fanboy. I'm not married to this distribution. It's what works for me right now. Tomorrow, I could be using something else. I could be on Arch or Gentoo or Ubuntu. Probably not Ubuntu, but they're just kind of moving in a direction that's completely opposite of the way I'd like to go as far as how I use the desktop. I had my fingers crossed for Linux Mint, but I've been testing out the RC. I don't know. It's not hugely impressive to me. So right now, Fedora's the way to go. And again, if you have any questions about Fedora or about Linux in general, and you want some help, I'm going to leave in the description below. I will leave some of my contact information. I've got a Gtalk account that a lot of the people who follow me on Twitter or follow my Android work, I allow them to, anytime I sign on to this Gtalk account, you can talk to me about Android, you can talk to me about Linux, anything you want help with, I try to, help you out. So by all means, you can follow me on Twitter, you can, get in touch with me on Gtalk, and leave some comments in the video section below, because the more feedback that we can get, we can help one another. If you're having an issue with Fedora, put it in the comments below. Maybe if I don't see the comments, someone else does, they can help you with a certain issue you're having. But anyway, as always, guys, thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you for keeping up to date with my YouTube channel and my videos. And let's see here. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.